Imagine the most dysfunctional family reunion you've ever attended. Now multiply that chaos by 1,000, add some shape-shifting, sprinkle in a few monsters, and top it all off with the impending doom of the entire universe. Welcome to Loki's family tree, possibly the most bizarre and twisted lineage in all of mythology. Before Marvel made him a household name with his glamorous horns and silver tongue, Loki was already stirring up trouble in ancient Norse myths. But here's what might surprise you. This trickster god isn't just famous for his mischief. He's also responsible for bringing some of mythology's most terrifying creatures into existence. And trust me, these aren't your average problem children. We're talking about world-ending monsters who make modern horror films look like bedtime stories. Unlike the other gods who called the golden halls of Asgard home from birth, Loki's story begins in the frosty realm of Jotunheim. Born to the frost giants Laufey and Farbauti, talk about starting life with a cold shoulder. Loki was already different from the very beginning. When Odin, the all-father of the Aesir gods, was wandering through Jotunheim after a war with the giants, he discovered a surprisingly small frost giant child. Whether out of compassion or foresight that this child might be useful someday, Odin took the abandoned Loki back to Asgard. Think of it as the most consequential adoption in mythology, like adopting a cute puppy only to discover it grows up to help destroy the world. Raised alongside Thor, Odin's biological son, Loki grew up with all the privileges of being an Asgardian prince. But despite the golden spoons and divine company, Loki never quite fit in. The other gods were all about brute strength and honor, while Loki preferred cunning and clever solutions. It was like sending a chess master to a weightlifting competition. He had different talents altogether. This outsider status shaped everything about Loki's character. While Thor was swinging his hammer and getting cheered by the crowds, Loki was developing the silver tongue and trickery that would make him both invaluable to the gods and their biggest headache. Imagine being the kid who's always too smart for his own good, but with divine powers. That's essentially Loki's childhood in a nutshell. Now, most gods in mythology had impressive children who became heroes or minor deities. Loki? He took a completely different approach to parenthood. His first notable relationship was with the giantess Angrboda, a name that literally means the one who brings grief. Talk about relationship red flags. When your partner's name literally predicts sorrow, perhaps it's time to reconsider your dating choices. This union produced 3 children who would give any family therapist nightmares. First came Fenrir, a wolf so enormous and ferocious that even the battle-hardened gods of Asgard trembled at the sight of him. Imagine the world's largest, angriest dog with divine powers and a grudge against authority, and you're getting close to the picture. The gods were so terrified of Fenrir that they tricked him into being bound with a magical ribbon called Sleipnir, though it cost the god Tyr his hand in the process. That's right. Loki's son was so dangerous that the gods played the ultimate game of got your nose, but with unbreakable divine restraints. The second child was Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent. This wasn't your average garden snake. Jormungandr grew so enormous that he encircled the entire world, ocean and all, and could grasp his own tail in his mouth. Picture the world's most extreme reptile, long enough to wrap around the entire planet Earth. This massive serpent was thrown into the ocean by Odin, where he continued to grow and became Thor's arch-nemesis. Nothing says complicated family dynamics quite like your cousin repeatedly trying to fish up and kill your snake son. The third child born to Loki and Angrboda was Hel, a goddess whose appearance was striking in the most unsettling way possible. Half beautiful woman and half decaying corpse, Hel was the embodiment of death's duality. When the other gods saw her, they didn't exactly throw a baby shower. Instead, Odin cast her down to Niflheim, where she became the ruler of the dead. Imagine being handed the keys to the underworld as a teenager. That's essentially Hel's coming-of-age story. There, she presides over those who die of sickness and old age, while the warriors who die in battle go to Valhalla. Even in death, Norse mythology maintained a strict class system. The gods thought they were solving a problem by separating these monster children from society. In reality, they were creating the perfect villains for their own downfall. Nothing motivates world-ending rage quite like divine family rejection. Just when you think Loki's parenting stories couldn't get any stranger, wait until you hear about Sleipnir. If you thought your family had embarrassing stories about how you were conceived, Sleipnir's origin puts them all to shame. This legendary eight-legged horse wasn't just Loki's child. Loki was literally his mother. Yes, you heard that right. The trickster god didn't just father monsters, he gave birth to one. It all started when a mysterious giant offered to build an impenetrable wall around Asgard in just 3 seasons. His payment? The sun, the moon, and the beautiful goddess Freya. The gods, thinking they'd found a bargain too good to be true, agreed, but with a seemingly impossible catch. The giant had to complete the work alone and finish within a single winter. What the gods didn't anticipate was the giant's extraordinary workhorse named Svadilfari, who could haul massive stones with ease. As the deadline approached and the wall neared completion, the gods panicked. They turned to the architect of their problems, and often their solutions, Loki. Under pressure to prevent losing Freya and the celestial bodies, Loki transformed himself into a beautiful mare. Picture the ultimate catfishing scenario, but with divine horses. The stallion Svadilfari, immediately smitten, chased after Loki the mare into the forest, leaving the giant unable to finish the wall in time. Several months later, Loki returned to Asgard with a unique souvenir from his horse adventure, an 8-legged colt named Sleipnir. This wasn't just any horse. Sleipnir grew to become the fastest, strongest steed in all the 9 worlds. Odin claimed this spectacular mount as his own personal horse, making Sleipnir perhaps the only member of Loki's unusual brood to be welcomed in Asgard. Think of it as the ultimate bring your child to work scenario, except your grandfather rides your kid into battle. Norse family dynamics were complicated, to say the least. Not all of Loki's children were monstrous or had extra limbs. With his wife Sigyn, a goddess known for her loyalty and who definitely deserved better, Loki had 2 sons who were surprisingly perfectly normal by divine standards. Narfi and Vali were Loki's most human-like children, with no scales, fangs, or extra legs between them. For once, it seemed like the trickster god might have a shot at something resembling a normal family life. But this is Norse mythology, where happy endings are as rare as a peaceful Asgardian feast. The fate of these sons represents perhaps the most heartbreaking chapter in Loki's complicated family story. After Loki orchestrated the death of Baldur, Odin's favorite son and essentially the golden boy of Asgard, the gods' patience finally ran out. They hunted down the trickster to exact their revenge, but in true mythological fashion, they didn't stop at punishing just Loki. In one of mythology's cruelest twists, the gods transformed Vali into a rabid wolf. Unable to control his new feral nature, Vali attacked and killed his own brother Narfi. Picture the most nightmarish version of sibling rivalry imaginable. One brother transformed against his will, the other becoming collateral damage in divine vengeance. The gods then used Narfi's entrails to bind Loki to 3 stones, creating magical bonds from the remains of his own son. It's like the ancient Norse version of using your family photos as prison bars, psychologically torturous on a whole new level. Above Loki's bound form, the goddess Skadi, who had her own grudge against Loki, placed a serpent that continuously dripped venom onto his face. Only Loki's faithful wife Sigyn stayed by his side, catching the venom in a bowl. But whenever she had to empty the bowl, the venom would splash onto Loki, causing him such agony that his thrashing would shake the earth itself, which the ancient Norse believed caused earthquakes. Talk about a marriage vow taken to the extreme, for better or for worse, including catching face-melting venom for eternity. After ages of imprisonment and suffering, Loki's family story culminates in what can only be described as the most catastrophic family reunion in mythological history. Ragnarök, the Norse apocalypse, doesn't just feature Loki. It stars his entire monstrous brood in leading roles. If you thought your family gatherings were tense, they have nothing on this end-of-the-world scenario where daddy issues literally destroy the universe. When the final battle begins, Loki breaks free from his bonds after who knows how many centuries of painful captivity and leads an army of frost giants and the dead against the gods of Asgard. But he doesn't come alone. It's bring your kids to work day on an apocalyptic scale. Fenrir, finally freed from his magical restraints, grows so large that his lower jaw touches the ground while his upper jaw scrapes the sky. With a mouth literally big enough to swallow the world, he fulfills his destiny by devouring Odin himself. Imagine the ultimate "I told you so" moment after centuries of being chained up by your adoptive family. Meanwhile, Jormungandr, the world serpent, rises from the ocean depths, spewing so much venom that he poisons the sky and sea. His ancient rivalry with Thor comes to its fated conclusion when the thunder god finally manages to slay the enormous serpent, only to take 9 steps backward before succumbing to its lethal venom. It's the mythological equivalent of mutually assured destruction, a final deadly embrace between cousins who were always destined to be enemies. Even Hel plays her part, releasing the dead from her realm to join Loki's forces. The only member of Loki's bizarre family who doesn't turn against the gods is Sleipnir, who carries Odin into his final battle. Imagine the awkward position. Your grandfather riding you into battle against your father and siblings. And people think modern blended families are complicated. The family drama of Ragnarök reveals the true tragedy of Loki's lineage. Had the gods accepted these children rather than fearing and banishing them, could the end of the world have been avoided? Instead, their rejection created the perfect storm of resentment and revenge that ultimately destroyed them all. It's the ultimate cautionary tale about family acceptance. Treat your relatives poorly, and they might just bring about the apocalypse. While ancient Norse people told these tales around fires during long, cold winters, Loki's family tree has found new life in our modern entertainment landscape. But as with any good game of mythological telephone played across 1,000 years, some interesting changes have taken place. Think of it as the ultimate family makeover, from horrifying to Hollywood. Marvel's interpretation of Loki in their cinematic universe has become so iconic that for many people, Tom Hiddleston's charming Trickster has completely overshadowed the original myth. But Marvel took some serious creative liberties with Loki's family connections. Gone are his monster children and his role as both father and mother to various creatures. Instead, Marvel reimagined him as the adoptive brother of Thor, creating a sibling rivalry that drives much of the narrative. It's like taking your family tree and pruning off all the weird branches. Suddenly, your 8-legged horse son and world-encircling serpent offspring are nowhere to be found. The hit video game God of War Ragnarök takes a different approach, keeping many elements of Loki's monstrous brood intact, but adding its own distinctive twists. Here, Atreus, a young boy accompanying his father Kratos, is revealed to be Loki, completely reinventing the trickster's origin story. Rather than being a frost giant adopted by Odin, this version of Loki is half god, half giant, and raised by a Spartan war god with anger management issues. Talk about an unexpected adoption twist. The game does feature Jormungandr and hints at other members of Loki's mythological family, but rearranges the timeline in mind-bending ways. Rick Riordan's Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard series brings Loki's family saga to young adult literature, introducing a new generation to Norse mythology. Riordan portrays Loki as a manipulative villain, but gives detailed attention to his children. Here, Hel becomes a complex character with her own motivations, rather than just a frightening ruler of the dead. It's like finally giving the forgotten children of the family their moment in the spotlight. Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology and the popular TV adaptation American Gods take a more faithful approach to the original myths, presenting Loki's monstrous children in all their bizarre glory. These retellings remind modern audiences that long before CGI monsters roamed our screens, they lived in our ancestors' imaginations. And they were often part of complicated family dynamics that feel surprisingly relevant today. These modern interpretations share something significant. They all recognize Loki's family story as fundamentally tragic. From the Marvel films to video games and novels, creators seem to understand that beneath the monsters and magic lies a tale about rejection, prejudice, and the consequences of fearing what's different. In many ways, Loki's family has become more relatable to modern audiences than ever before. After all, who hasn't felt like an outsider in their own family at some point? While ancient Norse people told these tales around fires during long, cold winters, Loki's family tree has found new life in our modern entertainment landscape. But as with any good game of mythological telephone played across 1,000 years, some interesting changes have taken place. Think of it as the ultimate family makeover, from horrifying to Hollywood. Marvel's interpretation of Loki in their cinematic universe has become so iconic that for many people, Tom Hiddleston's charming Trickster has completely overshadowed the original myth. But Marvel took some serious creative liberties with Loki's family connections. Gone are his monster children and his role as both father and mother to various creatures. Instead, Marvel reimagined him as the adoptive brother of Thor, creating a sibling rivalry that drives much of the narrative. It's like taking your family tree and pruning off all the weird branches. Suddenly, your 8-legged horse son and world-encircling serpent offspring are nowhere to be found. The hit video game, God of War Ragnarök, takes a different approach, keeping many elements of Loki's monstrous brood intact, but adding its own distinctive twists. Here, Atreus, a young boy accompanying his father Kratos, is revealed to be Loki, completely reinventing the trickster's origin story. Rather than being a frost giant adopted by Odin, this version of Loki is half god, half giant, and raised by a Spartan war god with anger management issues. Talk about an unexpected adoption twist. The game does feature Jormungandr and hints at other members of Loki's mythological family, but rearranges the timeline in mind-bending ways. Rick Riordan's Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard series brings Loki's family saga to young adult literature, introducing a new generation to Norse mythology. Riordan portrays Loki as a manipulative villain, but gives detailed attention to his children. Here, Hel becomes a complex character with her own motivations, rather than just a frightening ruler of the dead. It's like finally giving the forgotten children of the family their moment in the spotlight. Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology and the popular TV adaptation American Gods take a more faithful approach to the original myths, presenting Loki's monstrous children in all their bizarre glory. These retellings remind modern audiences that long before CGI monsters roamed our screens, they lived in our ancestors' imaginations, and they were often part of complicated family dynamics that feel surprisingly relevant today. These modern interpretations share something significant. They all recognize Loki's family story as fundamentally tragic. From the Marvel films to video games and novels, creators seem to understand that beneath the monsters and magic lies a tale about rejection, prejudice, and the consequences of fearing what's different. In many ways, Loki's family has become more relatable to modern audiences than ever before. After all, who hasn't felt like an outsider in their own family at some point? As we reach the end of our journey through Loki's wild family tree, what can we take away from this tangle of monstrous offspring, divine punishment, and apocalyptic family reunions? Perhaps more than you might expect from a mythology created by Viking warriors over 1,000 years ago. At its heart, Loki's family saga is about difference and acceptance. The gods of Asgard, for all their power and wisdom, couldn't see past their fear of the unknown. They looked at Fenrir and saw only a monster, not understanding that their treatment would create the very beast they feared. They cast Hel into the underworld and Jormungandr into the ocean, ensuring these children would grow up with resentment rather than belonging. Even Sleipnir, the most useful of Loki's offspring, was valued for what he could do rather than who he was. It's the mythological equivalent of the age-old parenting mistake, loving conditionally rather than unconditionally. Loki himself stands as one of mythology's most complex figures, neither holy villain nor hero. He's the ultimate outsider who desperately wants to belong, but can't stop himself from breaking the rules. His children inherit this complicated legacy, caught between worlds and belonging nowhere. Their stories resonate because they speak to universal human experiences, feeling different, seeking acceptance, and dealing with rejection. These aren't just monster tales. They're family dramas with teeth, sometimes literally. And perhaps that's why Loki's family continues to captivate us today. In an era where blended families, adoption, and questions about identity are increasingly common, these ancient stories feel surprisingly relevant. They remind us that family dynamics have always been complicated, that acceptance has always been challenging, and that how we treat those different from us has consequences that can echo across generations. So the next time you think your family gatherings are chaotic, remember Loki's brood. Your cousin's awkward political opinions at Thanksgiving dinner might be uncomfortable, but at least he's not a world-encircling serpent destined to poison the sky. Your sibling rivalry might be intense, but you're probably not fated to kill each other during an apocalyptic battle. And while your parents might occasionally drive you crazy, they presumably never turned one of their children into a wolf that killed its brother. Loki's family tree stands as the ultimate reminder that no matter how dysfunctional your family seems, it could always be worse. And that, perhaps, is the most comforting mythological lesson of all.